pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome to the Vietnam Veterans News Podcast. News of interest about Vietnam veterans from a Vietnam veteran. Now, here's your host, Mac Payne.
This is Mac Payne here with episode 1836 of the Vietnam Veteran News Podcast. News about the Vietnam War and the brave veterans who served there, as told to you by yours truly, a Vietnam veteran. And in this episode, another Vietnam veteran is going to make a contribution right here on this episode. He is none other than John Shoemaker. He has been on this podcast in 16 different episodes, talking about his experiences in Vietnam, primarily as a combat platoon leader in the Americal Division up in I Corps during the Vietnam War. John is an outstanding representative of that great generation of Vietnam veterans. He went to college up in Massachusetts. He had a strong desire to serve his country in its time of need. He felt that he should do his part to support his country in the Vietnam War, no matter how unpopular the war was. After graduating from college up in Massachusetts, he joined the Army, went to Infantry Officers OCS, and became a second lieutenant in the Infantry Corps of the U.S. Army. Went over to Vietnam and was assigned to the 196th Infantry Brigade in the Americal Division and was sent almost directly to the field. In his podcast, in his contributions to this podcast, he talked about in detail his entire tour, starting out with his first combat patrol, and then all the way up to one of the last things he did in Vietnam was to take some of his troops to see Bob Hope at Da Nang. Then he described the joy he experienced when he flew home, as all Vietnam veterans did when they got on that plane and they took off into the wild blue yonder knowing they were leaving Vietnam. It was a great thing. John is planning to come on this podcast one more time to talk about lessons learned from the Vietnam War. It's going to be good. Don't miss it. He said something very profound at the end of his last interview on this podcast. I have a great need to share it with you again. Vietnam vet John Shoemaker opines about the Vietnam War. I'm going to share it with you, and I want you to listen to it and think very carefully about it. Whether you are a Vietnam veteran or not, it is a very strong message that we all should hear. It has to do with not only patriotism, but also self-improvement and how you can make a better life for yourself and for your family and all those around you. So sit back and listen to the profound message from Vietnam veteran John Shoemaker. We've had a very interesting time listening to your descriptions of your experiences over there in Vietnam, and I must say it was very impressive, and it was a look at what actually went on with an infantry platoon in Vietnam, because everybody else in Vietnam were there to support what you were doing, you and your men in that platoon, and you have just given a tremendous description of life in that platoon and what you had to do to get the job done and to survive.
As I look back on all of this, I know that in 1968, this was a very tumultuous time. This is where, Walter Cronkite every night showing the body count, 500 a week, and all of the demonstrations going on, anti-war this, anti-war that. And I was the contrarian that said, no, I'm going to go do this. I look back on it now, having survived that year, and I may have felt a whole lot differently if I came back without legs and arms or whatever. But I made it back, and I look back on it now as the most valuable experience of my life. Forget college, forget my career. I mean, as an experience that would transform you, the military in Vietnam was was so dramatic and so positive in many ways. I don't dwell at all on a negative. I tell it like it is, but what it was significant and positive for me as a person. And so I am proud of it. I am proud of paying my dues, and I do view it that way. I'm proud to be an American, and I'm proud that ever since I've been able to leverage that experience to be a contributor to our society. And I mean that not in any, egotistical way, but as an honest way of saying in life, it's important to contribute and not just take. So I can't say enough about it, and I will always recommend the military service to those who are considering it today. It's a wonderful developmental training opportunity that young men and women should consider as they look at their life and what they can do to affect it in the most positive way possible.
John, that is so true and so profound. I have spoken to so many Vietnam veterans, and almost every one of them said basically the same thing, that they're better for it, and that they would do it again if they were asked to do it. At first, I was shocked when I heard this, that they all kept saying, yes, I'd do it over again, I'd do it over again. That's where I came up with this often repeated assertion on this podcast: the Vietnam veteran generation is as great as any that ever heeded the call of duty from its country. Not only did we serve our country well in a difficult situation over there in Vietnam, when we came home, we continued serving our country. Just like you said, we were older, wiser, stronger, and better able to deal with adversities than our non-Vietnam veteran contemporaries, and you, along with all the rest of us over the last 50 years, have proven that. John Shoemaker, thank you very much for your contributions to this podcast. And we look forward to your next visit, and you're going to tell us about what you see as the important lessons learned in Vietnam. This is Mac Payne closing out episode 1836 of the Vietnam Veteran News Podcast. Thank you so much for coming to listen to these presentations. You are cordially invited to return again soon and often to hear more that will be coming your way on this podcast, the Vietnam Veteran News.
If you like what you hear, then go tell somebody. If you like what you hear, then go tell somebody. Oh, Lord, go tell somebody. Yeah, go tell someone.
How about that? Ain't that a mess?